Grant Alden stood frozen in the doorway of the conference room, his hand still gripping the polished brass handle. His eyes locked on the man sitting at the head of the table, a man he'd forgotten about the moment he walked away from a year ago. But this man hadn't forgotten Grant. Not the words, not the laughter, not the humiliation. The man he'd mocked, the waiter he'd dismissed with cruel joke in front of a ballroom full of elites, now sat in a navy suit worth more than that night's entire bar tab. And he was smiling, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with something far more devastating. Confidence earned through the very thing Grant had told him to get. A real job. How did a spilled glass of water change everything? Stay with me, because what happened next will make you rethink every interaction you've ever had with someone you thought didn't matter. It was a chilly autumn evening in downtown Chicago, the kind where the wind cut through the streets like a warning. Inside the Pembroke Hotel, the cold couldn't reach the privileged. Crystal chandeliers dripped light across the grand ballroom, like frozen waterfalls. Women in silk gowns glided between marble columns. Men in tailored tuxedos laughed over champagne towers that sparkled under golden spotlights. This was the annual Pembroke Foundation Gala, a fundraising event where Chicago's wealthiest gathered not to give, but to be seen giving. The air hummed with the kind of confidence that only money can buy. Conversations floated in careful tones. Stock portfolios, vacation homes in Aspen, mergers that would reshape industries. At the center of it all stood Grant Alden, 42 years old, self-made tech magnate, founder and CEO of Alden Dynamics, a software giant that had swallowed 3 competitors in 5 years. His sharp jaw and sharper tongue had made him a legend in boardrooms and a terror in negotiations. He didn't just close deals. He dismantled opponents with surgical precision. Tonight, he was working a room like a maestro conducting an orchestra. A handshake here, a joke there. His laughter, loud, assured, infectious, pulled people toward him like gravity. Investors leaned in when he spoke. Junior executives memorized his words like scripture. But there was something else beneath Grant's charm, a cruelty that surfaced in small, calculated moments, the way he'd interrupt someone mid-sentence, the dismissive glance he'd give a server who moved too slowly, the subtle edge in his compliments that felt more like warnings. Grant Alden didn't see people. He saw transactions, assets, obstacles, and anyone who couldn't advance his empire simply didn't exist. That's why he never noticed Cole Ramirez. Cole moved to the ballroom like a shadow, professional, efficient, invisible. 26 years old, clean-shaven, hair neatly combed back. His white serving jacket was pressed to perfection. His posture was straight, despite the weight of the silver tray balanced expertly in his hands. He'd been working the Pembroke catering circuit for 2 years. Good pay, flexible hours, and most importantly, it allowed him to chase something bigger during the daylight hours. Something none of these guests would ever guess by looking at him. The waitstaff knew their role at events like this. Blend in, serve quickly, disappear. They were the machinery that kept luxury running smoothly. Seen but not acknowledged. Essential but disposable. Cole understood this. He'd made peace with it. Because every shift, every tray, every polite "excuse me" brought him one step closer to something that mattered. If you've ever felt invisible in a room full of success, you'll feel this next moment in your bones. Hit that like button if you're still with me, because what's about to happen will shatter that invisibility in the worst way possible. Cole balanced 4 crystal water glasses on his tray as he approached Grant's table. The laughter was loud here, the kind that comes easy when you're winning at life. Grant had just finished a story about outmaneuvering a competitor, and his audience of investors rewarded him with appreciative chuckles. Cole moved carefully between the chairs, reading the rhythm of the conversation, waiting for the right moment to refill glasses without interrupting. He'd done this 1,000 times. Precision was part of the job. But just as he reached for Grant's glass, an investor's arm swung out in an animated gesture. The elbow caught the edge of Cole's tray. Time slowed. The tray tilted. Cole's hand shot out to stabilize it, but physics had already won. 3 drops of water splashed onto Grant's left sleeve. Just 3 drops, barely visible against the charcoal fabric of his designer suit. But in that room, at that moment, it might as well have been a bucket of paint. The table went quiet. Grant looked down at his sleeve, then up at Cole, and then he laughed. Not the controlled, boardroom laugh he used to charm investors. This was something else. Louder, crueler, the kind of laugh that invites others to join in at someone else's expense. "Wow," Grant said, his voice cutting through the sudden silence at neighboring tables. "You'd think they'd hire people who know how to hold a tray." A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the guests. Cole's face burned. "I'm terribly sorry, sir," Cole said, his voice steady despite the hammer of his heartbeat. "Let me—" No, it's fine," Grant interrupted, waving him off dramatically. He turned to his table mates, grin widening. "I mean, it's just water, right? Though at these prices, I was hoping for better service." More laughter now. Louder. The kind that feeds on itself. Grant looked back at Cole, and in that moment, with the eyes of the room watching, he delivered a line that would echo across the next year of both their lives. "Maybe try a real job next time, buddy." The table erupted. One investor actually slapped his knee. A woman in diamonds covered her mouth as she giggled. Even some of the other waitstaff, standing along the walls, shifted uncomfortably, grateful it wasn't them. Cole stood there, tray trembling slightly in his hands, face flushed with shame. His training kicked in. Apologize. Retreat. Preserve dignity. Don't make it worse. "Again, my apologies, sir. I hope you enjoy your evening." He bowed slightly, a gesture that felt like swallowing glass, and walked back toward the kitchen. Every step felt like a mile. He could feel the stares, hear the whispers, the laughter that continued even after he left Grant's orbit. In the kitchen, Cole set down his tray with shaking hands. He leaned against the stainless steel counter, breathing slowly, willing the heat in his face to cool. Around him, other servers rushed past with trays and orders, oblivious of the small destruction that had just occurred. A real job. The words looped in his mind. Grant had said them so casually, so confidently, as if Cole's existence was a punchline, as if the work Cole did, honest, necessary work, was somehow beneath consideration. What Grant didn't know, what he couldn't see beneath the white serving jacket and polite demeanor, was that Cole held a degree in computer science from the University of Illinois, that his student loans, $63,000 and counting, demanded payments he could barely afford, that he worked these gala shifts not because he lacked ambition, but because he had too much of it, that every night after he hung up his serving jacket, Cole went home to something that mattered more than any ballroom full of billionaires. Drop a comment if you've ever been underestimated, because Cole's about to show us why that's always a mistake. What Grant never saw, what none of them saw, was what happened after chandeliers dimmed and the champagne towers were wheeled away. Cole's apartment was a studio in Logan Square, 12 minutes from the Pembroke if you caught the blue line at the right time. 600 square feet of cramped efficiency, a Murphy bed that folded into the wall, a desk he bought from a thrift store, scarred with coffee rings and scratches, and a laptop, his most valuable possession, that stayed open from midnight until dawn. This was where Cole's real work happened. It started 6 months before the gala, during a regular shift at Lucia's, an Italian restaurant in River North where Cole worked weekday lunch crowds. He'd noticed something that bothered him. The kitchen constantly ran out of ingredients mid-service. Mushrooms would be gone by 2 o'clock. Parmesan would run dry during the dinner rush. The chef would scream. Servers would apologize to frustrated customers. Orders would be canceled. The problem wasn't the suppliers. It was a system or lack of one. Restaurants tracked inventory using clipboards, gut instinct, and prayers. There was no real-time data, no predictive analytics, no smart reordering based on historical trends and seasonal patterns. Cole saw an opportunity. He started building an app in his spare hours. Something simple at first. A digital inventory tracker that restaurant managers could update in real time from their phones. But as he coded late into those autumn nights, the vision expanded. What if the app could predict shortages before they happened? What if it could automatically place orders with suppliers? What if it could analyze waste patterns and suggest menu adjustments? He called it PlateSync. The work was brutal. After 8-hour catering shifts, Cole would come home at midnight, eat instant ramen standing over the sink, and collapse at his desk. His eyes would blur by 3 a.m., the lines of code bleeding together on his screen. He'd debug until dawn, catch 2 hours of sleep, then wake up to do it all over again. There were nights when he almost quit, when the errors piled up faster than he could solve them, when investor emails went unanswered, when his bank account dipped into double digits, and he'd wonder if Grant was right, if he should just find a real job and abandon this fantasy. But Cole didn't quit. He thought about that ballroom, the laughter, the dismissive wave, the assumption that he was less than because of what he did, not who he was. And he kept coding. Winter came. Chicago snow piled against his window. Cole wore fingerless gloves at his desk to save on heating bills. He pitched PlateSync to small restaurant owners who gave him 10 minutes of their time out of pity. Most said no. Some said maybe. A few said they'd think about it. Then, in February, a breakthrough. A small Mediterranean restaurant in Wicker Park agreed to test PlateSync for free. Cole installed the system himself, trained the staff, monitored the data obsessively. Within 3 weeks, the restaurant reduced food waste by 18%. Within 6 weeks, they'd avoided 3 major shortages during their busiest nights. The owner told another owner. Word spread. By spring, Cole had 7 restaurants using PlateSync. By summer, 23. He quit his catering jobs and went full-time on the app, living off ramen and the thin margins of his subscription model. He hired a part-time developer with the last of his savings. They added features, supplier integration, predictive ordering, waste analytics dashboards. The app wasn't perfect. There were bugs, crashes, angry calls from restaurants when the system went down during dinner service. But Cole fixed every problem, answered every call, showed up in person when needed. He built something that worked. By autumn, exactly 1 year after the gala, PlateSync had caught the attention of 3 major restaurant chains. They wanted meetings, demos, pilot programs. The app that had started as a solution to a problem Cole noticed, while carrying trays, was now being discussed in corporate strategy sessions. And then came the email that changed everything. Alden Dynamics, Grant's company, was expanding into food tech solutions. They'd tried to build their own inventory management platform and failed spectacularly. Their system was clunky, expensive, and restaurant hated it. Meanwhile, PlateSync was gaining market share they'd expected to own. Alden Dynamics wanted to acquire PlateSync. The irony wasn't lost on Cole. The man who told him to get a real job now needed what that job had built. The acquisition offer was substantial, enough to clear Cole's student loans 20 times over, enough to change his life. But more than the money, Cole saw something else in that email, a door opening to a room he'd been locked out a year ago, a chance to walk back into Grant Alden's world, not as a waiter, not as a punchline, as an equal. The Alden Dynamics headquarters occupied floors 20 through 35 of a glass tower in the Loop. Cole stood in the lobby on a Tuesday morning, dressed in a navy suit he bought specifically for this meeting. His shoes were polished. His hair was perfect. His handshake was firm when Grant's assistant greeted him. Mr. Ramirez, they're ready for you in conference room A. The conference room was everything you'd expect. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, a table that could seat 20, leather chairs that probably cost more than Cole's first car. The Alden Dynamics team was already seated. 3 lawyers, 2 executives, a financial analyst with a stack of papers thick enough to stop a bullet, and an empty chair at the head of the table where Grant would sit. Cole took his position across from that empty chair. His own team, a lawyer he'd hired last month, and his business partner, flanked him. He placed a leather portfolio on the table, hands steady, breathing calm. He'd prepared for this moment, rehearsed his talking points, reviewed the acquisition terms. But nothing had quite prepared him for the flood of memory that hit when those brass-handled doors opened. Grant Alden walked in mid-conversation, laughing at something his CFO had just said. He wore a gray suit that probably cost $5,000. His confidence filled the room before he did. He moved toward his chair, still talking, not yet looking at who he was meeting with. So I told him, if you can't negotiate better than that, I'll find someone who... He looked up. His eyes landed on Cole, and everything stopped The color drained from Grant's face like someone had pulled a plug. His mouth hung open mid-sentence. The CFO, confused by the sudden silence, followed Grant's stare to Cole. Cole stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. He extended his hand across the table, and when he spoke, his voice carried none of the trembling uncertainty from a year ago. It was measured, professional, unshakable. "Good to see you again, Mr. Alden. I believe you once told me to try a real job." The room became a vacuum. Grant's team exchanged confused glances. Someone coughed. The financial analyst's papers rustled as she shifted uncomfortably. Grant's hand moved automatically to meet Cole's, but the grip was weak. His mind was clearly elsewhere, racing backward through time, landing on a ballroom, a tray, water on his sleeve, laughter he'd orchestrated. Cole." His voice cracked slightly on the name. "Cole Ramirez, founder and CEO of PlateSync." Cole gestured to his chair. "Please sit. I think we have a lot to discuss about the future of your food tech division." Grant sat slowly, his earlier confidence evaporating like steam. His team watched him carefully, sensing something was wrong, but unable to identify what. The CFO tried to reset the room's energy. "Well, Mr. Ramirez, we're excited about PlateSync's potential. Your user acquisition numbers are impressive, and we think Alden Dynamics can help you scale." "Let's be clear about something first," Cole interrupted gently. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers steepled. His eyes never left Grant's face. "PlateSync doesn't need Alden Dynamics to scale. We're already scaling. 3 restaurant chains are launching pilots next quarter. 2 grocery store chains are in talks. Our revenue has grown 400% in 6 months." He let that sink in before continuing. "What you need is PlateSync. Your internal platform failed. You're bleeding market share to competitors who are partnering with us. This acquisition isn't about helping me. It's about saving your position in a market you're losing." Grant's jaw tightened. The old instinct to fight back, to dominate, flickered in his eyes. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the weight of his own words from a year ago. Maybe it was a realization that the power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. Maybe it was just the crushing embarrassment of being on the other side of the table from someone he'd publicly humiliated. "So what are your terms?" Grant asked quietly. Cole opened his portfolio. "Fair market value for the acquisition. Full autonomy for the PlateSync team within your company. My name stays on the product. And..." He paused, letting the moment breathe. "A formal role for me as VP of Innovation at Alden Dynamics, with a seat in strategic planning meetings." One of Grant's lawyers leaned in to whisper something, but Grant waved him off. His eyes remained locked on Cole. "That's aggressive," Grant said. "It's fair," Cole corrected. "You're not just buying software, Mr. Alden. You're buying vision. The kind of vision that comes from understanding problems from the ground up, the kind you develop when you're close enough to the work to actually see what needs fixing." The subtext hung in the air between them, invisible but heavy. Grant heard it clearly. The kind of vision you don't get from the head of a table, looking down at people you decided don't matter. The negotiation lasted 2 hours. Cole didn't budge on his core terms. His lawyer handled the fine print, while Cole maintained steady eye contact with Grant. A reminder that this wasn't just business. This was a correction, a rebalancing. When the preliminary agreements were signed, Grant's hand shook slightly as he put pen to paper. The same hand that had waved dismissively at a waiter a year ago now signed over $8 million, and a piece of his company's future to that same person. Cole stood, extended his hand again. "Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Alden. I look forward to working together." Grant took the hand, and this time his grip was firmer, not dominant, not competitive, just present. There was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Not quite remorse, but close. Recognition, perhaps, or just the sobering weight of consequences. "Cole," Grant said quietly, so only Cole could hear as the teams gathered their materials. What I said that night was exactly what I needed to hear," Cole interrupted. His voice wasn't cruel, just honest. "It reminded me why I was working so hard. So thank you for that." He left Grant standing there, processing words that were somehow more devastating than any insult could have been. If this moment hit different, smash that subscribe button. We got more stories like this coming. Grant Alden learned something that day that most people learn too late. If they learn it at all, every person you dismiss, every life you treat as background noise to your own story, every moment you assume someone's current circumstance defines their worth, those aren't just moral failures. They're strategic blindness. Because here's the truth that wealth and power sometimes obscure. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you can't see. Everyone is building something, dreaming something, becoming something. The waiter serving your table might be coding the next revolutionary app at 3 in the morning. The janitor cleaning your office might be studying for the bar exam. The delivery driver at your door might be filming content that will inspire millions. You simply don't know. And when you treat people as disposable, as punchlines, as less than because they're serving you in a moment of your convenience, you're not just being cruel. You're making a bet that their story ends where your perception of them stops. That's a bet you'll lose more often than you think. Cole Ramirez didn't set out for revenge. He didn't spend a year plotting Grant's downfall. He simply did what resilient people do when faced with humiliation. He used it as fuel. He took the anger, the shame, the burning unfairness of that moment, and he converted it into something productive. He built. While Grant continued playing a game he'd already won, Cole was playing a different game entirely. One where the rules rewarded creation over destruction, vision over status, and substance over appearance. The real power in Cole's story isn't that he got revenge. It's that he didn't need it. By the time he walked into that boardroom, the humiliation had already transformed into something else. Not bitterness, not resentment, just quiet proof that Grant's judgment had been catastrophically wrong. And that's the lesson worth carrying forward. Success isn't about proving something to the people who doubted you. It's about proving something to yourself. That you're stronger than their words. That you're capable of more than their limited imagination could see. That their opinion of you is just noise, and your work is signal. Grant Alden learned this lesson the hard way. He learned that cruelty is expensive. That word's echo. That the universe has a strange way of engineering poetic justice when you least expect it. But perhaps, in that conference room, he learned something else too. That humility isn't weakness. That respect isn't charity. That the person you underestimate today might be the person you need tomorrow. Cole walked out of that building $8 million richer. But the real win wasn't the money. It wasn't even the satisfaction of seeing Grant's face when recognition hit. The real win was knowing that when someone told him to get a real job, he built something so real, so valuable, so undeniable that the person who mocked him eventually had to pay for it. That's not revenge. That's transformation. And transformation is always the better story. What would you have done in Cole's position? Would you have taken the deal? Would you have walked away? Would you have said something different? Tell us in the comments. I read every single one. If this story reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, someone who's grinding in the shadows, working towards something bigger, building while others doubt, share this video with them. Sometimes people need to know their work matters, even when it feels invisible. And if you want more stories like this, stories that dig into the messy, complicated truth about ambition, resilience, and what happens when life serves poetic justice, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started here at Earthly Tales, because every person has a story, and some of those stories will change the way you see the world. See you in the next one.